This Window Ledge YouTube channel video is sponsored by Great Big Steve. Never be lonely again. He can do tricks, he can tell jokes, but more importantly, he's your new best friend. Stick around to learn more, please take him off our hands. A few years ago, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild became my favourite game ever. The non-linear structure, the world, the art style, the exploration, all combined to make such an amazing experience. Since it came out in 2017, many developers have tried to replicate the feel of Breath of the Wild. There's definitely been a lot of inspiration taken from the game, but to be honest, nothing has been able to match the love I had for this game. They either lean too far into realism to the point where I'm taking better care of my fictional horse than my real self, or they're just bland. So of course the only thing to come close would be the sequel, Tears of the Kingdom. And now that I've played through it all, it might just beat Breath of the Wild as my favourite game. Though like most things, it's not without its problems. Now let's start by looking at the world. Breath of the Wild's world was my favourite part because nearly every bit of it felt intentional. The Korok seeds and the shrines spread around the map meant that there really wasn't a wrong direction to go, and every little landmark you saw, even if it was just a few trees or some ruins, would have something to make investigating it worthwhile. And to top it off, the climbing and paragliding meant that the actual topography, the lay of the land, was less of an obstacle but rather a part of the puzzle. Just getting somewhere could be done in more ways than one. Do I ride up the road with Goblin? Do I ignore the road and climb up? Or do I, for lack of a better description, lock in? The world was so pretty and vast, and even after a few playthroughs, I was finding new things. But my love for the world of Breath of the Wild actually became my biggest concern for Tears of the Kingdom. Now, when the then unnamed sequel was announced at the then alive E3 of 2019, I was obviously very excited, but as I said, a little concerned too. My real worry was, how are you going to make me enjoy exploring the same world again? Because it was that sense of wonder and the discovery of new things that made me love the first game. How are you going to capture that same feeling when it's the same world? I had my doubts right up until release, but luckily those worries vanished because you know what they did? They hid Hyrule 2 under Hyrule, and Hyrule 3 above Hyrule. What sickos. I was pleasantly surprised to get that same feeling of discovery. Obviously you have the two new areas, but even the land was different enough to feel like I was exploring it for the first time again. Mainly because there is so much more to do. But before I can get into that, I think we need to talk about the new mechanics. Breath of the Wild had these 5 mechanics that most of the puzzles were built with in mind. You had Magnesis, Stasis, Cryonis, Bomb 1 and Bomb 2. Now these were cool, I had a lot of fun messing around with them, but looking back now, they weren't super important. Obviously they were pretty necessary in the little puzzle box shrines around the map, but outside of those they sort of felt irrelevant. Anything you could do with a bomb you could do with a big hammer. Magnesis only worked on metal, Stasis was mainly used to prank bokoblins, and Cryonis was used a grand total of 4 times, and that's being generous. But Tears of the Kingdom not only has much cooler mechanics, but I found myself using them a lot more. Breath of the Wild is like a school basketball team, Tears of the Kingdom is the US Olympic team. First is Ultra Hand, and this might be my favourite mechanic in any game ever. Not only does it make Magnesis completely redundant by having the ability to pick up any object, not just metal ones, but you can make contraptions by gluing stuff together with the evil green goop Pritt stick. This feels like what the entire game is built off of. There's so many physics-based puzzles to be solved by sticking stuff together, it is so much fun. But you're not just making things out of sticks and stones, there are these things called Zonai devices, which elevate Ultra Hand from a neat party trick to the central mechanic of this game. You've got the fan device and you think, okay, what if I attached it to a log and put it on water and now you've got a boat? There's wheels, so now you can make a cart. Then there's a steering wheel, so now you can make a car. Not every device is a winner. Like, if you've played this game, did you remember that there's a fire hydrant device? Like, this is pointless. Well, not completely. But the vast majority are really great, and throughout the game as they're all slowly introduced to you, you're just thinking about the random things you can make. It is so much fun. This is what LEGO Fortnite should have been. Solving puzzles with it and finding different ways to traverse is so cool. Ultra Hand is LeBron, by the way. Next up we have Fuse. Now this is the developer's answer to the weapon durability debate. In Breath of the Wild, your weapons would break after a while, as a way to make it so you're not just using the same stuff over and over. Personally, I thought it was fine, but I do think it could have benefited from each weapon lasting like 50% longer. And that's kind of what happens in this game, but in the most insane, unique way. Instead of finding your fully fledged weapons, you find decayed weapons that don't really do much on their own, and then make them more powerful by attaching different things to them. Materials will do different amounts of damage depending on how hard it was to get, or how powerful the enemy who dropped it was. So if I fuse a horn with an attack power of 17 to a sword with 10, then you get a 27 damage sword. But it doesn't stop there. Attaching a gem can make the weapon create fire, attach an eyeball to an arrow to make it home on the enemy, attach a rocket to a shield to go flying. There are so many of these special effects, so much thought has gone into it. It creates so many more strategies to fighting. It's awesome. You see a new item and wonder what it could do to your weapon. The game doesn't tell you all of them. It's this sense of childlike wonder. I love it. Cheese wizard. The third and fourth are Ascend and Rewind. Ascend allows you to pass through anything above you and emerge at the top. It's really great for minimizing downtime for a certain thing that I'll mention soon. There are combat opportunities with it, but not many, and it is quite obvious where the game wants you to use it. Rewind is probably the Cryonis of Tears of the Kingdom. I found myself forgetting it existed, which might just be me. I feel like there weren't many puzzles that could only be solved with Rewind, which might be why. And it's a shame because it's way cooler than Cryonis and must have been a nightmare to make. I just didn't see myself using it that much. Anyway, the new powers are much better than in Breath of the Wild, and Ultra Hand particularly really just elevates the overall design for me. As I said before, Breath of the Wild was unique in that the world didn't feel like an obstacle. There were multiple ways to get somewhere, and now there are even more. You can get so creative with them. It's now time to talk about what there is to do, but before that, it's time for a brief message from our sponsor. It's Great Big Steve, now up to 40% bigger than the previous model. Feeling down? Feeling like no one cares for you? Worry no more. Steve is your new bestest friend. But what can he do? He can roller skate. He can spit fire. He can piss for over 7 minutes straight. That's a record. But more importantly,
You did not recognize his face.
here's a happy customer. I was just so lonely back then, but Big Steve came and I immediately felt like I had known him my whole life. Now we do everything together. Now with 12 new and relevant voice lines. Use code GreatBigSteve for 50% off and same-day delivery. Great Big Steve. Lonely no longer. I really don't know what happened. He just started making this horrible sound. I don't know what to do. I really need. Well, thanks for that, Steve. But now let's talk about what there is to do. It's all good having a pretty world with good traversal options, but you need things to make the exploration worthwhile, especially when you have the same world that we've explored like 10 times already. So what is new about this old world? Well, quite a lot. Obviously the land is practically identical, but hidden away are these caves which are completely new. It's a really simple new addition that doesn't feel too far-fetched. It's not like a huge mountain has sprung up out of nowhere. I really like these. And there's loads. There's 147, which is nuts. And I feel like they're the reason that Ascend is in the game. As once you've reached the end of a cave and found everything, you don't have to waste time retracing your steps. You can just emerge back on land. It removes any downtime and just makes the whole experience flow nicely. Shrines are back, which I'm very pleased about. They were so much fun in Breath of the Wild. Again, they really enforced the idea that there was no wrong way to go. They were spread out across the map, each one getting you closer to a health or stamina upgrade, and they're pretty much the same, but just in different positions. Obviously they focus on the new mechanics and the result is a lot of really great puzzles. Though I will say they are fun, but I don't think they push the boundaries for what can be done. In fact, I don't think they even really reach the boundaries. This is a game where you can create this and this, but the shrines didn't really push me to be creative. The solutions are fairly simple. I wish they didn't hold back as much. Comparing the creativeness and thinking required to something like Portal, which also has a really great main mechanic with so much potential for crazy puzzles, and the difference is night and day. Obviously Tears of the Kingdom isn't solely a puzzle game, but I just wish I was challenged a bit more. Koroks are back and I think they've done them justice. Particularly these guys, who you're tasked to deliver to their friend who will be up a mountain or across a river. This is where you can really be creative with Ultra Hand and the Zonai devices, making vehicles and such, and it's so cool. For some you can just pick them up and walk, but you're not going to do that. You're going to make up your own solution, whatever it is. I'm sure it treats the little Korok friend with respect and comfort And this is what I wish the shrines were like, with more creativity, because I feel like I came up with a different vehicle each time I saw these guys. Come on, this is it. You'll be there soon, don't worry. Come on. Go, go. No! The settlements have changed just enough to feel fresh. New side quests that are just as charming as in Breath of the Wild are a nice change of pace to the fighting and such. Most characters don't have voices, but they still have a lot of personality. Credit to the localization team for that. So, Link, did you get a good picture? Stupendous! So that's the land, but we've been treated with 2 entire regions in the sky and below ground. The sky is made up of various little floating islands, which are basically their own mini shrines. They're all really spread out, so once again, it's up to you to create traversal solutions. Being, you know, islands, the puzzles and such that they hold are very contained, which is quite a nice contrast to the open world below. It's just more Zelda, and that is a good thing. Speaking of more Zelda, the depths is just another Hyrule. Like how you look for shrines in the overworld to get health upgrades and teleport points, you look for these light routes to light the way and reveal new things. A simple bit of design I've really liked about the depths is that the light routes are in the same position as the shrines in the overworld, meaning your exploration in one aids exploration in the other. Even if you neglect one of the regions for a while, it still feels like you've made progress in the other, even if it's just knowing where the next lamp is or where a shrine may be hidden. Overall, I was pleasantly surprised with how much there is to do in this game. The biggest problem with Tears of the Kingdom isn't even to do with the game, it's to do with this. Now don't get me wrong, the Nintendo Switch is probably my favourite console ever, which is insane considering how many evil design choices it has. The Joy-Cons are kinda genius, but the stick drifts after about a year. The stand is genuinely useless unless you use a counterweight, and it can barely run its own shop. But what makes it my favourite console is that you can use it anywhere, and it has some amazing exclusive games. But it is really starting to show its age. Pretty much every game that Nintendo releases is limited by the fact that it has to run on the gaming equivalent of the Reliant Robin. And I said the console is starting to show its age, but to be honest, it started showing its age at day 1. Breath of the Wild was a launch title and was and still is locked to 30 FPS because the Switch just can't handle anything higher. And it would dip well below 30 in certain places. Now, 30 FPS is fine, it's very playable, but games should really be striving for 60. It just makes a far more enjoyable experience. 7 years later, we're still on the Switch, and Tears of the Kingdom is once again locked at 30 FPS, and now dips below 30 more often than the original did. And again, don't get me wrong, the fact that this game runs on the Switch is incredible, given all the complex mechanics and how big the game is, and the fact that you can go from the sky to the overworld to the depths seamlessly without loading screens. It's a technical marvel. But it shouldn't have to be this way. Think of it as like someone beating Elden Ring blindfolded. Incredibly impressive. How did you even do that? That looks so hard. But everyone knows that's just a challenge, and if you wanted to play the best Elden Ring you could, you're gonna look at the screen. Nintendo the last 7 years has been doing a YouTube challenge run. Whatever the sequel to the Switch is, Switch 2, New Switch, Switch Cube, I just really hope that A, it is significantly more powerful, and B, games like Tears of the Kingdom get a performance patch. And see, it looks like this. I can't really blame every shortcoming on the Switch. The game itself does have a few, like the options are really limited. There are pretty much zero accessibility graphics and UI options. Games nowadays have really improved with their settings. It's just unanimously a good thing. High contrast modes, alternate control schemes. It just means more people can experience more things. Tears of the Kingdom doesn't have anything close to this. In The Last of Us 2, you can have a narrator that tells you what Ellie can see. In Ratchet & Clank, you can turn off visual effects. For Resident Evil 4, do you want Leon's hair to be cute or really cute? In Tears of the Kingdom, you can invert the controls, which meant Stampy could play the game, which is good. But you know, this is the only thing it can do. But anyway, overall, Tears of the Kingdom might be one of my favorite games ever. I just love it. I've been very positive about a lot of games in this channel, but I'm being real this time. You gotta play this one. But anyway, thanks for watching. Big thanks to Steve for the sponsor, and I'll see you in the next